Hi, everyone. This is Bowen Yang.
And I'm Matt Rogers,
co-host of the podcast Las Culturistas. We're inviting you to treat yourself with the gift of pleasure.
Oh, yes. Trojan Ecstasy Ultra Ribbed has a unique design that actually lets you feel the pleasure, not the condom.
That's all I've ever wished for on my birthday.
Scorpio Queen, horned up king. And with ultra smooth premium lubricant and extra deep ribs to increase stimulation, both partners are sure to experience ecstasy.
Pick up some Trojan Ecstasy Ultra Ribbed condoms, triple tested and trusted for over 100 years.
Trojan, feel your best. Get yours on.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Michigan's AutoTalk podcast. It's episode number 38. I'm Phil Tower, along with our one host of the show, Al Schwinkendorf. John Puick has this episode off. We remind you every episode of the AutoTalk podcast is all about celebrating the automobile, everything automotive. We're also about helping and supporting you, car and truck owners across the state of Michigan, birthplace of everything automotive. We're on Spotify, we're on Apple Podcasts, we're on Google Podcasts, and of course the iHeartRadio app. You can even tell your smart speaker to play Michigan's AutoTalk podcast, and lo and behold, it'll play the latest episode. Al Schwinkendorf, man about town, 40 years in January 2022. That would be
42.
This 42. Is it 42 years?
Yes, it is.
Well, happy anniversary. 1980? Is that right?
Yeah.
So you were like a junior, senior in high school?
No, I was a sophomore, and it was halfway through the year, and I had enough credits to get out of school, but there were classes that were only given the next 2 years, like government and stuff like that. So kind of pioneered, I called it work release. Had to go to the school board with the guy at our high school that ran the school store and stuff like that. And we got all the paperwork together and went to the school board and got approval so I could leave school at noon and go to work. And I've been there ever since.
They didn't kick you out. That's pretty amazing.
No, crazy.
And one of the most loyal clientele bases you will find anywhere with any business in West Michigan at Verbergs Automotive. And of course, you can find more online and wherever. Just drive by Cascade and Thornapple River Drive, and you'll see it right there. I thought we'd talk a little bit in this episode, and we may have to ask Mr. Puick about this in the next episode. So J.D. Power, which comes out with all kinds of lists, they are out with their best resale cars for best resale value for vehicles for 2021. No surprise, Al. Honda is at the top of the list. Lexus is up there. We had some surprises, though. Ford Bronco for the first year as an off-road SUV. I kind of laughed about that one because I don't
even really understand that, because
I don't either.
Even though they've been talking about it for 3 or 4 years, it's only been like 4 or 5 months that people have actually been able to get one. But I have heard it was kind of like when the Vipers came out and the first Hellcats, where people would buy them and then go resell them. And I think the COVID marketplace, I don't think with the Honda or the Lexus or Toyotas and stuff, but with the Bronco, I think is skewing that, because everybody who had a Bronco or wanted one, back in the 70s or the 80s, and now they see this thing, and the ones that are really decked out are very, very cool looking, and I think that's driving their prices. So I think that maybe we need to revisit the Bronco in 2027 or 2028 and see if it really does hold up.
Yeah, and here's another surprise on the list, and I want to hear your reaction about this. The full-size HD pickup of the year, according in terms of best resale value, the GMC Sierra HD. Yep. That surprised me, because I know Ford has, the Super Duty. What do you think it is about that versus the Ford? I mean, Ford outsells the GMC Sierra.
I think that's a lot of it is volume out there versus where they go. I have heard that, there's loyalists for the Rams, for the Fords, and for the GM vehicles. I guess I'm still wondering where they get these numbers and how old of a vehicle are they looking at. Now, they have always said that Chevys and GMCs hold their value than any other vehicle out there. And as far as pickup trucks go, whether it's a half ton or it's a heavy duty 3/4 ton or 1 ton, but the numbers are so skewed. There's so much fewer out there. I think it's simply a supply and demand. I'm not sure.
Another surprise on the list, the full-size utility vehicle with the highest resale, according to the new J.D. Power list, this is for 2021, is the Chevy Tahoe, which I don't think that should surprise people because people hold on to those. I mean, I know you work on a fair amount of those. They seem to be pretty decent vehicle overall.
And if you need those, I mean, we're beyond the days where most of the cars that are available off there can't do a whole lot of towing. But there are a lot of people with fairly large campers and boats and things of that nature. And that Tahoe is perfect. It's not as long as a Suburban, so you can get it in the garage. You can get the kids and their soccer equipment in it. You can tow the boat. You can do everything. It's pretty much the perfect fit for all that. I don't understand why, but if you look at the sheer numbers of half-ton pickups, which that is based off as well as like a Ford Expedition, the Tahoe, the Yukon is the other variant between GMC and Chevy, will outsell an Expedition incredibly. But the pickups are just the opposite. So it's kind of weird. Just is what it is, I guess.
In terms of a micro utility vehicle, I guess that's a category now. You've got all these baby SUVs. The Hyundai Kona was the top of the list. That surprised me actually quite a bit. The Honda Passport for a midsize SUV with 2 rows, and then the Kia Telluride, which is still and has been one of the hottest selling SUVs out there.
And a lot of vehicle for the money.
Yeah, a lot of vehicle for the money too. You're right.
Kind of like the Kia too. I mean, they're, 15 years ago, the Hyundai Kia line was a fraction, of what you paid if you bought something from the big three. And the pricing has come up and stuff, but a Telluride is a really sweet vehicle, and it's like 15 grand cheaper than going out and buying the same thing that says Cadillac or Lincoln or Ford or Chevy on the side.
Yeah, and like you said, a lot of bells and whistles and
a lot of reliability too.
That's been a game changer as well too. I want to ask you, as someone who's worked on these vehicles for 42 years this month, what do you think it is about the Honda that makes it so, number one, it's attractive. It's, and I guess you could say it's the engineering. What is it that makes these cars so bulletproof? Is there any one or two things you can pinpoint?
Domestic cars have always evolved highly based on what the government's mandated from them. European cars have totally evolved, by a bunch of Einsteins and whatever they can pass by the bean counter, because there's a lot of cars out there, Audis, BMWs, and that are Mercedes that are over-engineered. They're more than they need to be. And Honda does, I read a book about them a long time ago when, like in the 60s and early 70s, when they came to America, they started selling cars in California. They started selling motorcycles and stuff like that. They give the people what they want and nothing less. Nothing more. And they do, I don't want to say the bare minimum to make it go, but they don't over engineer things, and the stuff they have just works. And it's also where we still have plants for the big three here in the country. And I mean, everything's made here nowadays, but we have plants that have been retooled since right after World War II. When they were making tanks and airplane engines and stuff, and then they went on and on in the 70s, late 70s and early 80s. And remember, the Hondas were rust buckets and stuff like that up until the 80s. I mean, they said, okay, this is a problem. We've got to fix it, just like Toyota and everything else. They've learned their lessons and they move on. They have newer plants than what the United States have, and the Koreans have the newest of anybody, because they came into the scene late 90s. It's just a mindset and what they do. But, in America, you can buy, well, let's put it this way. You take like a Corvette or a Mustang or a Challenger, you'll never find one of those from Honda or Toyota. They have their cars that have good power and this and that and everything else, but they don't go overpower it. And so that same Mustang that you're going to have everything from a turbo 4-cylinder to a supercharged V8 in, you make everything beefy enough to handle that supercharged V8, and then we back engineer and put smaller engines in them to get economy and stuff like that. That's not how they think. They think, what does it take to move this thing down the road, make it quiet, make it safe, make it stable? It's just a different way of thinking.
Yeah, that's a good point. And that's true about the rust. That was one of the reasons that everybody used to make fun of the Japanese cars back in the 80s when you and I were, just getting out of high school. And even before that, they would rust through immediately. And I remember the first Honda I owned, I had an 87 Accord hatchback. Loved that car. I would buy another one if I could find it today. It was the two-door.
And you can't because they all rusted out.
Yeah, they
I have
did.
a friend searching for the same thing, his very first 78 Accord, and it's just there are none out there. They just can't be had.
Yeah, and if you find one, it's probably from Arizona or Florida or Texas, and it's maybe 20 different shades of what it used to be because
the interior's all rotted out.
Yeah, but it probably still runs.
The funny thing is, we had not all that long ago, in the mid 2000s, Toyota had a huge deal with Tacomas and 4Runners and stuff like that, where they recalled vehicles because of rusted out frames that were dangerous. And I had a client whose wife worked down 28th Street. Lunchtime one day, she took the truck into the Toyota dealership to get an oil change. She got a phone call and said, "We got to have a talk. You can't have your car. We're either going to give you this much for it or we'll give you this much towards a new one." And she called up and like, "What the heck's going on?" And it's just because they looked at it and it's so rusty that they weren't letting them go out on the road. And somehow or another, Toyota overcame that, and they still have their loyal customers. I had a guy with a 2006 4Runner, decked out, leather interior, beautiful vehicle, very low miles on it. Same thing happened. Had it in for a recall on something else. They inspected the frame and said, "We got to buy this back. You can't have it." And he came down. He goes, "It's paid for. It's got like 40,000 miles on it. I love this thing." This guy who works from home, doesn't go very far or do much, but he tows the boat with it and everything else. And it's just like, yeah, your frame's rotted out and it's got to go. And for some reason, if that was Chevrolet or Ford, it would have been a huge, huge deal. And for some reason with Toyota, it didn't matter because those people went out and bought other Toyotas, and just because you buy a Toyota or a Honda or a Lexus, you pretty much own those for life. Why buy anything else?
Well, and don't forget Toyota, I think it was 2009, 2010, they had that massive brake issue, which was a nightmare of a PR problem, and they overcame that. Yeah,
they do. They have a very good way of bouncing back from adversity.
I mean, I guess everybody after a while, time passes and people forget those things, but
it still doesn't matter. I mean, you buy the cars, they hold their resale value. When they have people coming in, going to buy a kid's car, I'm going to buy like a Camry or an Accord, and they bring in this car with 250,000 miles on it that the people want $5,000 for, and you look at it and you go, it's not bad, but it needs this work and that work and all that. So you're going to end up with $6,500 in it. And they go, well, yeah, but if I don't buy it, the next person will. And it's like a tough deal. But I mean, that's the reality of it all. They hold their resale because I think they've proved the point that they do have longevity and they are very reliable. And so they just demand a high dollar.
One of the things I know, but I want to say this just before we wrap up. There's a difference between buying an older Honda, like from the early 2000s, and an older Toyota, much more reliable than buying a 17 or 18-year-old Hyundai or Kia. Big difference there, isn't there?
Yes, and technology and everything has a lot to do with that. And the one thing is, things have evolved so much. I mean, you had 2 airbags, 15 years ago. Now you got 8 of them, and that drives prices and everything else too. But everything about them, like right now, I don't know how I could live with a personal vehicle that didn't have a backup camera.
Agreed.
I mean, I don't know how many times that saved me from running into the old lady with the shopping cart at Myers and stuff like that. And everybody should have them. And, all this technology that's going on just, not only drives prices, but it used to be everybody'd say, well, I want like a full size, like a Chevy Caprice or a Ford LTD that's got a full frame and everything else because my kid's driving around in it. So when they get in a wreck, they'll be okay. Well, now you got to think about the airbags, the anti-lock brakes, the traction control, the lane, departure systems and all that. It's a whole different ballgame, and it all costs money.
And that's why you got to do your shopping well. That will put the wraps on episode number 38. We will be back next week with a fresh new episode 8. Don't forget to like our Facebook page. We are continuing to grow our Facebook page, and we're always throwing some interesting things up there for car buffs. Facebook.com/Michigan's AutoTalk. And also also, we're on not Facebook, we're on YouTube as well. You can check out and you can listen to our shows there. Any of the episodes are on YouTube, as well as Spotify and wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Until next time, I'm producer Phil Tower.
I'm El Schwinkendorf.
Have a good one, everyone.
Take care.
All right, we're at home with Claire, who is warming up for a bit of boxercise.
Yep, she's welcomed in the new year with a fancy new workout setup.
Look at that branded punch bag with matching gloves.
And that gorgeous coordinated athleisure.
So coordinated.
She is working out and working it.
Well, with prices this good on designer workout gear, how couldn't she?
Whoa!
She's back on the sofa.
With her feet in an excellently priced foot spa.
Iconic.
Get those toes to Marshall's.
Fabulous brands.
Feel good prices at Marshall's.